Hello and welcome to Contramundum. We have a very special episode today, hopefully, that we get to. We will be talking about Renaud Camus. Am I pronouncing that right, CJ? You're more of a francophone than me.
No, don't ask me about the French stuff.
Yeah, we'll find out. But we're going to be talking about the we can't use the term that
Right.
he came up with
The GR.
on here. Yeah, the GR, the Le Grand exchange of one thing for another thing,
Mhm.
right? And our guests, we maybe have a scheduling snafu here. Maybe who do you know who invented time zones, CJ? Because whoever did, right, we're angry with that guy right
Probably
now.
FDR.
We'll just blame him. It was before that. It was during the railroads that it came into being
I
in
think
the
it's FDR.
late 19. We'll just blame him. Um,
He couldn't stand, not being on time. So
yeah, so we might.
that was a
I know. We they might be joining us in 45 minutes. But if not, we want to talk about this. At least we'll do an appetizer of
so my
this
so I
topic.
yeah so there's two of them. They translated Camus like a series of essays on what he calls the great. What did he call it? No. What is it? The disaster. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
he
calls it
called
the
himself.
disaster. Yeah,
He's the
that's
he's
the
the enemy
code.
of the disaster.
Yeah.
Um, but the GR is something that like is in the news and everyone's talking about it. And like these guys have done great work in translating the original essay, but there's a whole bunch of preliminary essays that have to do with this that kind of set up the theme. And this is that theme. The GR is sort of the capstone on like a greater century-long transformation of the West. And so he kind of sets that in context. Like people just think, the GR is basically a bunch of like Soros types sitting in a back room with cigars coming up with this conspiracy of how to take over the West. And that was never what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And it was much more descriptive than it was accusatory. And these guys have done a great job just translating his works, setting it in context, rehabilitating his approach to world affairs in the modern world. And they are very knowledgeable of all of his work and his theories and his ideas. And so like one of the things that we want to do, and I bet he'll come on in 40 minutes. I think there was just a miscommunication about time zones.
Yeah.
So he might still be here. But basically, like, what is this thing? Why is it important? Why is everyone talking about it? And why should we recover the original meaning of this thing? Because it is very much a description of how Westerners see themselves on the world scene. And like there's this idea that what's his name came up with, liberalism is the suicide of the West. Who is the guy that wrote the Machiavellians? I totally went
James Burnham.
James Burnham. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
liberalism is the suicide of the West. So like, I mean, that's basically like a lot of what Camus saying is basically Western man has this suicide pact. Like he's just really into liquidating his heritage. Like that's something that like characterizes the modern world. And so just digging into the French perspective on that, I think it's just massively helpful. And people, and this is, by the way, this was inspired by Camp of the Saints, right? So like this is the same thing that people have recognized since the 60s as what is happening in the West, and it originated in Germany and France, permeated out to the Anglo-Saxon world and to America, and basically now everyone's involved in this cult of liquidation. And I think it's a really good concept. So hopefully in 40 minutes he'll join us, but Andrew and I can just, kind of set it up for a little bit and burn some time.
If not, I mean, the one of the points at the conference that we did in Texas with Paul and Stephen, that Paul made a really good point. I mean, it's something I maybe knew somewhere in my head, but it's you go to things like that, and it's pieces that are in your head getting put together and made sense of. And he made the point that the difference between East Germany and West Germany and the occupations there, and the cultural results of both those places are stark, right? The differences, like East Germany is still still Germany, even though it went under devastating economic and political effects in that,
Mhm.
but they still maintained their character as German people. Whereas in the West, right, they did not face um, the economic deprivations that took place in East Germany. They had lots of stuff and things were nice, but their culture was completely subverted and destroyed, and
Yeah.
they were made to feel immense guilt uh, for their existence as a people, right? And the same thing took place in France and Italy, and it has in Great Britain, right? Everywhere NATO has occupied for the last 80 years, that's what's happened, and that same program that was done on West Germany has been done in our own country, right? Where it
Yeah.
isn't, and the last, and that's part of this is like the last aspect of it is replacing the people, right? Changing the people, right? Everything before you get to
Correct.
that point,
Yeah.
you have to destroy the culture. You have to destroy the identity and heritage of a people before because if you don't do that, I mean, if you're thinking about it in this Machiavellian way, which I don't, it's way more complex than that. It's not like somebody just in a back room decide we're going to go do this. But if they did, and if you were doing that, um, and you start with exchanging the people, importing all sorts of millions and millions of foreign people to um, bring about mass demographic change. Well, the people, if they still have their cultural identity, their heritage, and and their own nation, still, they'll revolt, but they'll oppose it. They won't let that happen, right? So it's a the demographic change is a lagging indicator of everything else that has occurred before then, and that's, I think that's an underappreciated aspect of this. I think it's something that that people don't really talk about. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of, I mean, a major theme in my book that I wrote is, you quite frankly, like our entire way of life has been subverted and destroyed. Where you rip the soul from a people, their historic way of living, of a people,
Mhm.
you take that all away and destroy it, and you deracinate them. You make them mere individuals that have no place, no people, no history, no heritage, no connection to the past, and no prospects for the future. Then you can do this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then you can just liquidate them because you've liquidated everything else before that.
Well, yeah. I mean, and like that's this thing. Like, we can talk in terms of the GR, but like the GR didn't just come post Obama or something like out of nowhere, where all of a
Like,
sudden
oh, we decided to do that.
yeah, no, like this is something that like before there was like before the idea that you could actually replace a people, you had to sever them from their own past, from their own roots. Like they didn't have any commonality, they didn't have a shared memory, a shared experience. They didn't have these customs and mores, these norms that bound them to each other. I mean, that's like the cult of liberalism, and like that's the cult of like um this absolute individualism where you don't actually belong to a community, but actually the community is something that's downstream from the individual choices of these rational robots that are
Yeah.
basically, that's that liberal instinct.
Where
And
where communities are like fandoms,
yeah,
right? Of I
so
like Star Wars, or I like Marvel, or I like this football team, and that's your identity as a people, is just what you've chosen, what products you choose to consume.
yeah,
That's
it's
all you
funny 'cause,
have.
like, just a little bit of personal reflection. I mean, that's like the libertarian ideal, where like all
Yeah.
community is based on these voluntary, like correlations of interests. Like the Star Wars community or whatever. But like seriously, like that was I didn't realize how much that leaned into the zeitgeist and how that was
Mhm.
actually undermining what was also there within me, which was this cultural conservatism. But
Yeah.
you have those two do not
They're
work
in
in
conflict.
tandem. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you remember like Stefan Molyneux,
Hmm.
uh, and one of the wackiest things about him was he like advocated for people completely separating from their family and like just cutting them off, right? From cutting yourself off from your parents and siblings and everything else. And it's like
Didn't he
it
abandon
within.
all that?
I think he maybe did. So I don't want to.
Yeah. No,
I
but like
don't.
he was the
But
ultimate voluntarist or whatever.
yeah, yeah, like he took his libertarian views to their logical conclusion, which every human relationship should be voluntary. And I
Mhm.
didn't choose to have the parents I have. I didn't choose to have the siblings I have,
Yeah.
or the extended family I have. And the but reality doesn't work that way. The way God made the world does not work that way at all. I mean, so much of it. I mean, so much of our conflicts today within evangelicalism. I mean, you see this play out on X.com every single day, where you have these evangelical figures, leaders, people, men we've respected for decades, coming out and saying things like, "Well, I don't have my people are Christians. I don't have a people besides that." Right,
Hmm.
and what that is a rejection of the fifth commandment. Right, you do have a people that you're bound to. You have parents that you're bound to, and then gradations from that. You have extended family that you're connected to. You have a local community of people that you're connected to. You have a nation
Hmm.
you are connected to that you need to honor. Right, and that was one of the hardest things. Like when I was libertarian and like very anti-war. I mean, I'm still very anti-war. That hasn't really changed. Uh, but you take it to this extreme, or at least I did. Maybe you did too, CJ, where it was like I almost hated the 4th of July and like
Yeah.
Veterans
Oh
Day
yeah.
and things like that, and Memorial Day, and kind of got all angry about those things, and I remember, um, when I was in that stage, I was in Moscow, and you know, talking to Doug um about like Veterans Day or something, and he's like, "Well, do you send your mom a Mother's Day card or wish her Happy Mother's Day, right? Even if she sins sometimes."
Hmm.
And I remember thinking that, like, "Oh, that's dumb. Like, that's not a good analogy." And now I look back on it, I'm like, no, actually, he was right. I mean, even if my mom's great, but even if my mom was like a monster and horrible, but she's still your mother.
Hmm.
Right? You still have a duty to honor her.
Hmm. The
And
idea of, see, that's the thing. Like, and the funny thing is that I don't think like these, like James White, Owen, the people like this, I don't think they actually disagree with this. They're just being really like, it's difficult for them to cope with challenging the post-war consensus.
yeah,
But like, I
yeah,
think, I think there is like within Christendom, there is this tradition of natural obligations. We have natural duties that don't pertain to gospel categories. These things
yeah,
precede the gospel. They're rooted in our very created obligations and duties as man. And that's where those things are found. And the point of the gospel is not to do away with them. It's to restore their purpose. It's to make them something that should be pursued because now we have this eternal hope. Um, but like this post-war consensus is really intention. It's not even intention with that, but it's a direct repudiation of that because it's
no,
it's calling us to abandon everything that bound us together. This is like the old French revolutionary instinct that the
hmm
entire world and history and heritage and custom, all of it needs to be burned to the ground and
yeah,
recreated along rationalistic lines. And
yeah,
there's nothing more damaging to the human soul than that line of thinking. I think what we see around us, the chaos, the moral anarchy, is directly caused by that sort of liberalism mindset.
yeah. I had a post today that I made. It like the heat map, a meme,
Yeah.
right? And right on the left it is conservatives, or the right or whatever, and it's right. I'll describe it for describing a meme, but I'll describe it for everybody that doesn't know. Um, the On the left is conservatives, and it's like concentric circles. It starts with yourself, then your family,
Mhm.
your immediate family, your children, your extended family, your neighborhood, your region, your country, and so forth, all the way down to like everything that exists, rocks and trees and everything else. Um, and right, the heat map of where people, what they love, or what they love more than something else, for the conservative, for the person on the right, is, basically extended family and things closest to that. Right, that's the center of it. But for the liberal, for the leftist, it's way out to all of humanity and all of the earth and all of the things that exist, and there is no affection for family and neighborhood and people around you like that. It has powerful explanatory power, right, for our entire culture and the way people think. And in terms of like theological terms, right, you have the ordo amoris, right, rightly ordered affections, a a very old concept within Christian thinking, and that's what the left side represents. And on the right, you have the post-war consensus iteration of the Imago Dei. Right,
Mhm.
historically, the Imago Dei did not mean what they when you hear Imago Dei, right, you hear it all the time, incessantly from all these people. Imago Dei, Imago Dei. Like this week, Missouri executed a murderer who stabbed a woman in cold blood 49 times. And they're like, oh, he like told all sorts of people that he did it, and like, guy's guilty, right? And you have all of these left evangelicals, regime evangelicals, ex evangelicals, all these could be. Oh, like David French. Oh, well, I think the evidence points to him being innocent. He didn't do it. Like, okay, all right, yeah, whatever. And what do they use when they talk about? Well, this guy's made in the image of God. He's made in the image of God. Well, if you go to the Bible and read where that term is used, you know where it's used, CJ?
Where?
In Genesis chapter 9, and it's given to Noah. And there, God says to Noah, right, man is made in the image of God. So if a man kills a man, his blood must be shed.
Uh-huh.
Right? Noah is given the authority, right, because the covenant is progressing and humanity is maturing, and he's given the authority to um to do capital punishment, right? Because man is made in the image of God, you need to execute murderers, right? That's what the Imago Dei means, right? It doesn't mean everyone has this spark of divinity in their soul. They're all made in God's image and everybody's all equal. It's so wonderful. And it's like, no, that's not what it means, right? That's not what it means at all. It's like 180 degrees, the opposite of what you're saying it means. But that's what they use to justify this revolutionary view of everything.
Yeah.
Is all humanity is equal,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have just as much duty to people on the other side of the planet as you do to your own children. And it's like that's insane. It is it is it's actually evil to use it that way. I mean, it's satanic to pervert God's word and things that God says are true, to use it in the service of evil. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that satanic and demonic and that language gets thrown around all the time, but like literally that's what it is. This is what Satan does. He lies about what God says is good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, when they use the Imago Dei that way, they're in service of Satan. Right? That's what you need to understand that. Like, you have a duty. I mean, it's written in the 10 words, right? The fifth commandment, we're not Lutheran or Catholic, so fifth commandment. Um, fifth commandment, right? Honor your father and your mother, and all of your duties flow from that.
Yeah.
Right? I just preached on Sunday on Ephesians 6 verses 1-4 about duties between parents and children, and fathers and their children, and right, that part of Ephesians, that's just Paul explaining the 10 words, right? The Ten Commandments and the duties that we have, right? What the fifth commandment actually means in practice. And it blows my mind, right? You see the things that Paul says, or elsewhere, like in Thessalonians, or rather, in First Timothy, right? That if a man doesn't care for his own family, he's worse than an unbeliever. Or in Romans, right? In Romans 1 and 2, when he's describing what the process of man being given over to its own sin and being punished for sin with further and worse sin, right? One of the things that he says is they're without natural affections.
Yeah.
Right. They're without natural affections. Right. What does that mean? Oh, what does that phrase? It means you say that all these other people like people in Ukraine matter more than your own children or the people in your own neighborhood. That's what that means.
Yeah. Well, the way they phrase it is like, those people, if they're Christians, have more in common with you. That's what they say.
Always. Yeah.
But it's funny because like, and this is why I always lean into like the two kingdoms solves this. Like they don't realize like
Bitcoin solved this.
But like Stephen's always very clear that like in terms of civil society, civil tranquility, that's what the Constitution describes, right? Mm-hmm. Social tranquility. You're allowed to look at the things that tie you together with others beyond just like the gospel. And so like they'll always critique it and say, you don't think the gospel is strong enough? It's like, well, the gospel is not the thing that binds civil society. Otherwise we'd be universalists, right? Yeah. Like that's the implication of that. If we're all running Christ, and like it just makes no sense.
Otherwise they'd be raising everybody else's kids.
But it just, right. It's funny because like this is a very basic concept. In fact, this is like, it should be an easy thing. Like this is the distinction between civil society and the actual like invisible kingdom of Christ. This is the difference.
It's like basic obvious stuff, as basic and obvious as men are men and women are women.
Yeah.
And so the same people were like, oh, there's only two genders or whatever. But then they'll turn around and say, oh, the gospel, the people who believe the gospel, Christians, those are my people. I don't have a people other than that. And it's like, no, that's the equivalent of saying, well, I think a man maybe can become a woman. Right. It really is. Like it's such a rejection of reality. It's in the same vein. I mean, they're the same kinds of things.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately how you have to look at it. And if you can't, like, I just, it like blows my mind that they can't understand those things, or they refuse to. I mean, it's because it's not a question of intelligence or whatever. It's a question of will and desire. They don't want to believe these things are true because believing reality takes courage, and it's a lot easier to say men are men and women are women than it is to say at this point that Americans are my people and Ukrainians and Israelis are not, or Haitians or whatever. Like those are not our. They need to go. Right. That sounds bad and evil and you're probably racist if you think that. It's like, no. If I lived in Springfield, Ohio, right now in this depressed town where all the jobs have been shipped overseas, and then they say, all right, guess what? Now you get a third of your population now is being added, and they're all going to be from the most backwards, primitive, violent society in the Western Hemisphere, and they're not going to speak your language, and they're going to crash cars and everything. They're going to eat the pets, which is actually happening. Right. They're going to inundate all of your public services where now you can't get anything. The insurance of everything is going to go through the roof. Your property values are going to plummet, and you're going to pay for all of it. Right. And just living in your town is going to be miserable now. Right. Like that, like you're not allowed to be on the side of those people. Right. Because of the Imago Dei.
Yeah.
Right? You're not allowed to sympathize with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're not allowed to put yourself in their shoes and think, gosh, that would be awful. Don't want that to happen to where I live. Right? You're not allowed to think those things.
Mm-hmm.
And because it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to stand up for those people. It takes courage to stand up for your countrymen.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do that.
But like, so I mean, this is part of that same, like, the replacement mindset, right? Like, the GR is, we all know what we should talk about what the GR is, but
Yeah.
the whole mindset of, well, the people are they're tired and they're sick and they're obese and like all these problems, and so the mindset, the justification for bringing in Haitians is we can just replace them, like as if they're like iPhones or something. Like, your TV gets old, you just buy a new one.
Just go
That's
get a new
the
one.
mentality of replacement. Like, your people are no longer up to snuff. They can't produce to the same capacity that they could in the 40s. No, just get rid of them and get a new people. Like, that's that mentality. So it's part of a greater trend of, if there's something that feels outdated, it's not worth investing in. You have no obligations to reinvest in the people that have binds with you at a much deeper, soulful heritage level. If they aren't leading to increasing the GDP line, just get more people. It's like, it's just that flippant artificiality of society, of community, and of all those things. It's the little replacement that precedes this, bigger one.
The big one.
One.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, I was at on Monday in Pennsylvania at Tucker's event, and I got to watch it, and honestly, like, he was talking about all these kinds of things, right? He was articulating the distinction between the Ordo Amoris and the fake and not heterosexual version of the Imago Dei. And because Vladimir Zelensky had gone to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and went there with little Josh Shapiro and signed a bunch of artillery shells.
Yeah.
And he's like, I walk around this town, and he's has some connection to that city in Pennsylvania, and I see this beautiful city, right? Once cared for and loved by people, where they invested massively into it. You have these beautiful stone and brick buildings all throughout your downtown, and this describes like basically every town in the Midwest, where it's like somebody paid a lot of money to make this look beautiful, and all I see homeless people on the street. I see people strung out on drugs, and Josh Shapiro doesn't care about those people making their lives better. He cares about fighting a war that cannot possibly be won, and sending billions of dollars to do that. He doesn't care about like making these people's lives better at all. And that's the entire, I mean, not just Josh Shapiro, but the entire political class in America, the entire leadership class in business is this way, right? I mean, you see this all attack. Did you see this David Bonson's attack of Stephen? Did you see that?
I think I saw the one.
And he was like quote tweeting that Kevin Young creature.
Oh yeah.
Despicable, like looks like he has grids. And he positively quote tweeting him, saying, yes, this is the opposite of what the Bible teaches, what Stephen's saying. And it's like,
that's fascinating to me, because what Stephen said is that you should prefer your own people that are near to you, compared to the ones that are on the periphery, right? But if it's the opposite of that, then you actually have to prefer the Haitian to your own people and your own family.
Yeah, exactly.
The opposite is.
Exactly. And I think about that. I look at a guy like that, big Wall Street guy, big, what was he? JP Morgan executive, like, yeah. Like, that's the class of people that has done this to our country.
Yeah.
Right. That
as long as the GDP line goes up,
big line go up, must be good. That's God's will. And it's sickening, right? It's disgusting. And what makes it the most disgusting is they use the Bible to justify it.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's what makes me so angry. Right. They use the Bible. I mean, they are like the Pharisees, who tell the man, and this is what Jesus' condemnation of them was, right? Who tell the man, oh, you got, you get double inheritance when you're the eldest, right? You got that big inheritance from your parents, and the point of that is for you to care for your parents in their old age. You got that inheritance, and oh, you wanted to spite them, right? Give your parents the big middle finger, and you donated all of it to the temple. Well, that was really good and really holy. And
Mhm.
Jesus says, you are subverting the commandment in doing that, and you look really holy doing it, right? That's what these people are doing, where they say, oh, the Bible teaches the opposite of that. It's like, the Bible teaches that it's good to ship all the factories over to China so you can make, a fraction of a percent more on the widgets you're making. And meanwhile, all of the cities in the Midwest are gutted, and everyone there is on drugs
Mhm.
and on disability and in poverty,
Mhm.
right?
And
Because
they're
but you
only
got rich. You got rich doing that, and
like
the Bible teaches it.
their answer is always like, well, first of all, they shouldn't be doing drugs. It's always to like,
Yeah,
lecture them. They
like
shouldn't be doing
moralism.
drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And also that like they can afford TVs now, like that they couldn't have. It's
yeah.
like, dude, who cares, man? Like everything that our grandparents worked so hard to build has come crashing down so we could have like Netflix. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah, and I think, just to like Tucker's point about the buildings, right? And you look at, you go. I live in the Midwest now, but you go to the Midwest, you go to the South, you go to all these towns. Every town has these beautiful brick, stone facades in their downtown, and like, do you ever wonder, like, why don't we do that stuff anymore?
Yeah.
Right? GDP's gone way up since then, since 100 years ago or
Mhm.
120 years ago, right? Why don't we build those things anymore, right? Well, maybe we don't have the masons and the people that can do it, but like, you can learn that stuff. It's still, that knowledge still exists, right? Why is the demand not there to do those things, right? Why is everything a strip mall that is built to last 20 years and then be torn down?
Because of the cult of replacism,
Yes,
which is what Camus talks about, right?
yes,
Like,
precisely.
we'll just use it for a while, we'll gut it, we'll exploit this building, and then we'll abandon it and go to the new one.
And then you look at like the Bible, all throughout the Bible, everything is long-term generational thinking, right? You build things for your children and your grandchildren. The
Mhm.
great example in scripture of, like Hebrews 11, is praising Abraham for, right, God gave him this promise and he knew he would never live to see it, but he went his entire very long life going through that entire life and pursuing that for who? For his children, for his grandchildren, for his great grandchildren and generations not born. And he built these things, built altars, did all these things in this land he knew he personally would not inherit because they would.
Yeah.
And the cult of replaceism
Mhm.
is, who cares? It's like the boomers with the bumper sticker on their RV that says spending my children's inheritance, right? That is held up as, well, we work for it, it's ours.
Yeah.
And you greedy kids, you dumb, millennials and zoomers, right? You got to work hard like we did. We worked really hard, and of course they did work really hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah.
And yet, right? What do you work hard for? Right? What do you work? You work hard for your children and your grandchildren, for them to have better lives than you did,
Mhm.
right? That is held up, should be held up as the ideal. But it's like, well, no, they don't matter. I matter. I'm the only one that matters. And when you have a society, a civilization that loses that completely, where it's just me, me, and what I get, and there's no future. There's no future generations that you're doing things for, and there's no respect for the past. Or there's no respect for your parents and your grandparents and great grandparents, the things that they built in sustaining and bringing it into the future. Right? That's right. Yeah, maybe if these Zoomers were buying iPads every weekend and $8 coffees, right? They'd have a fully funded retirement, right? Exactly, right. Um, it is it's sickening that is our mindset on everything, and why is that, right? It wasn't like people woke up one day and decided to be like, human beings have been selfish for all of human history.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh, well, we just decided one day we don't care about our children and our grandchildren or our parents or our great grandparents or the past or the
Well, yeah.
future. Like what happened? What changed?
Well, no, I mean, this is that cult of like meism, or history doesn't really matter. I didn't inherit anything, and therefore I have nothing to pass on. Nothing in the
Yeah.
past matters. In fact, the point of man is to overcome the past and
Yeah.
to live in the now. That presentism that denies the importance of the past and also denies, therefore, the continuity, onward to the future. And that's why that's the ideology of replacism.
Yeah.
That everything can just be replaced at all times. There's nothing worth building. And so, like, all these things, this entire discussion is a preliminary for the GR. Like,
Yeah.
this mentality kind of filtered through, that boomer mentality where you don't belong to anybody. Now their own children are being replaced because they bought into that replacism. That when you abandon longevity and you abandon like continuity and all these things, then why wouldn't you just replace the people?
Yeah.
Like,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're like the guy that runs the metal factory in Springfield, Ohio, saying, man, these Haitians are great. They're not on drugs. They show up for work. I wish we could have even more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile,
yeah, that's an interesting, like, we should talk about that too. But like, even if that were true, which I don't think it's true at all, I think he's just making it up because he gets money pumped into his.
He gets subsidized for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even if it were true, imagine someone confronting that by saying, yes, our people are in dire positions. Yes, they don't know how to work. Yes, they're obese. Yes, they can't think properly. Yes, they can't even articulate themselves. Like, maybe these Haitians are superhuman. Like, all the things that they say about them. Maybe let's say, oh, that's true. It is the obligation of a people to invest in themselves and to pick their own people up out of the gutter and to invest in them and make them a better people again. That's your natural duty. So even if it were true of all these things, that still doesn't justify the mass drops of these Haitians, these like temporary, whatever. What is it, the TPS or whatever? But it doesn't justify any of that, because the point is, invest in your people. But in order to invest in your people, you have to have a people. And that's the thing that we've been denied. We can't define who we are. We don't exist. There is no we here. It's just every individual for himself. And that's the mentality that underlays and sets the foundation for the GR.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it too, like just the point you make about not having a people, right? You think about, and we can dig into, American history and foreign policy and all the wars that we fought and all the problems with them and everything. But you look at the 20th century. Oh, am I losing you, CJ? You're frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I'm losing you. What happened to the internet? Is the internet in Tennessee bad?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. So I'm good. You can see me. I'm moving.
Yeah, I can see. You were getting blurry there for a second. I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm not going to move to. I'm just kidding. But
you got to tell our mutual friend here to up the internet.
Yeah, that's right. But no, I think about World War II, for example, and the people that fought in it understood that they were Americans, or Vietnam or Korea, like that we are Americans. We're, we could talk all about the reasons for fighting and everything, but the guys who were drafted or volunteered to fight, right, they're fighting because they're Americans, right? Their country's at war and they're fighting to defend it.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't exist anymore, right? If a great conflict like that happened, right, you don't even have a people to fight. To that, like, what are you fighting for? An economic zone? But I have to go take care of something really quick. Can you hear that?
And do what needs to be done.
Yeah, you could riff for a second on that point.
Yeah, I can't hear you. So you can go take care of what you need to take care of. I do hope it's 3 minutes until 2 Central. So I hope that our guest jumps on here for a minute. But like one of the reasons I asked these guys to do it, and if anyone's interested, like I already talked to these guys on the Chronicles Magazine podcast, which eventually I'll pick up again. But so that you can go listen to that. But like they just do a great job at understanding the context of the GR and setting it up as a something that was began to happen in like the 19th century. Like people began to adopt this mentality about the world and about their community that basically set us up to eventually replace the people themselves. And so like the GR is not something that just recently happened, that the corporations just decided one day to get around a table and create a conspiracy intended to increase their profits. But it's actually they're leaning into this natural development. It's something that's organic almost. It's something that they didn't have to artificially create, but it's something that's kind of been there the whole time, ready to come into fruition, which is what we're seeing now, that you don't belong to anyone. And like that's the mentality of the GR. That's like the GR is this capstone on this sort of this world historical cycle that's now coming into play here. So it's been around for a long time, the cult of replacism, and it started with the little replacement. The things that took place centuries ago, and the economic structures began to reiterate this, and the universities did, and corporate advertising and all of these things begin to lean into this mentality of replacism. I mean, that's why you see things like just there's no emphasis on Latin or Greek or the classics, classic literature or music or any of these other pillars of Western culture. None of these things are important anymore because you can just efficient your way out of them. They have no meaning anymore, so therefore they can be replaced by all types of subtypes, whatever you can make a profit on. And so this mentality of the GR is something that's been around for quite some time. So let me just respond to Josh here. Yes, that's what the GR means, but we can't say it for the algorithm. We're trying not to say it. So, but the book in question was translated. I don't even know how to pronounce it. The book in question was translated by Valbin, and the translators Louis Betty and Ethan Rundle were supposed to come on today. They might show up here in a minute, but basically it's this collection of essays by Camus, who is a French author who's been writing for decades, but he basically was the one that coined this phrase. And if you look him up on Wikipedia, there's all sorts of, it's just like the typical things that you'll read on CNN or MSNBC about who he was, and it's like described as this conspiracy theory. So one of the things they're really good at is going line by line through the Wikipedia entry on Camus and just totally taking it apart, because nothing that Wikipedia says about Camus is true at all. And like he's not on the far right. He's not posing. He's not pretending like there's this massive conspiracy, but he's just describing this development. Like the GR is something that needs to be described, not theorized. It's something that we see all around us. It's something that precedes migration patterns. It precedes demographic changes. It precedes all these things. And so it's just a really penetrating thinker that I think more people in the English world should take seriously. So yeah, I was just giving a lay of the land for about Camus in hopes that these guys join us, but they haven't yet.
We'll see.
So we'll have to do a part 2 on this and have them on. But like, did you read the intro? Did you read anything beyond the intro?
I read also read the essay, the GR essay.
Okay. Yeah. So the GR. So one of the things I like about this book, the collection of essays is called Enemy of the Disaster. That's what he described himself as. He's the enemy of the disaster. Disaster is basically the 20th century. So he's a man against history. And but I like how they put his prior essay called The Great Deculturation before the Great Replacement, because before before the GR, but before you can replace a people, you have to sever them from their culture. And I think that's that's something that I don't think a lot of Christians, certainly, but a lot of like just normies think about, is that we're not seeing a blossoming of culture, but we're really seeing a darkening a disappearance of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could describe our society now, it's very much an anti-culture. It's obsessed with liquidating things. It's obsessed with
Yeah.
destruction. It's obsessed with hysterical change in a way that like keeps people in a constant frenzy and makes it completely impossible to build a culture.
Yeah, there isn't any. Yeah, there isn't any great cultural work. I mean, not even. I mean, not even like looking at pop culture and things like that. But there's nothing.
Well, it's not even just that there's nothing, but like it's the trend to do whatever you can to agitate against culture.
It's
So like,
destroy what exists. Yeah,
well, like
yeah,
a good example of this is everyone knows how absurd fashion shows are, right? Like
yeah.
the fashion models, like they're absurd and they're ridiculous and they're like they bother your soul, right? Like the way
Yeah.
that they dress.
It's
That's
hideous on purpose. Yeah.
hideous on purpose, and that's the trend. So it's anti-culture. Like
And
all
modern art or modern architecture,
so the
same way.
elites,
Yeah.
the role of the elites in a society is to create culture. So our
Yeah.
elites are into anti-culture. So whenever there's
Yeah.
beauty, they have to lean into the ugliness. Whenever there's order, whenever there's stability, whenever there's something that's has continuity to it, they have to undermine every layer of that. That's why rap music is so popular. Pop music, everything's destructive. It's the cult of destruction, and Camus is the enemy of the disaster. And like he's describing something
Mhm.
that's he's putting the GR in context of a greater world historical phenomenon. And
Yeah.
that's why it's such a necessary read.
Yeah. It isn't. It's way more than just what you would see on the internet or whatever. And they go to great pains, especially in the introduction, to show that it isn't just this fringe right wing theory that guys at Charlottesville chanting stuff or whatever. It is far more complex, far more detailed, far more. I mean, Camus is far more intellectually rigorous than
He's
any of
also
the caricatures of it, and he's not right wing at
he's a
all.
leftist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, not a cultural leftist, but he's like, just like part of the old left.
Yeah,
He'd probably be sympathetic to like labor communism and some of those things. So he's not like this right wing extremist or anything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you think back. I mean, some of these themes, though, right? You think back to Pat Buchanan's speech at the Republican convention,
Mm-hmm.
right? His culture war speech, and at the time, people attacked him for it and said this is absurd and crazy. And now it seems relatively tame, right?
Yeah.
Now he just described what has happened the last 30 years
Yeah.
to our country and and he's able to do it. He was, it seems very prescient in saying those things at the time, but those things have been occurring for 30 or 50 years prior.
Yeah.
And he was just recognizing the trajectory everything was on. It is, I mean, all of those things, right? Somebody, I think it was like Joe Boot or somebody was attacking Stephen as well, by looking at the class or criticizing his use of good, true, and beautiful, right? The classical, Greek conception of virtue, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you should pursue that which is true and good and beautiful, and that it's like, oh, this is Greek thought. We don't want any Greek thought in
Dude,
here.
okay.
It's like
Like
it's true though, and the
not,
Bible, Paul uses this.
I've been saying this, like at the very beginning, I said that eventually the theonomists and the Christian nationalists were going to have a major clash. Like I saw this coming.
Yeah,
Um, it needed to be dehomogenized, and like this
yeah,
is a healthy moment because like
yeah,
the theonomists are actually a lot of them, the Joe Boots, especially people like that.
yeah,
Maybe not quite as much Doug Wilson, but like Joe Boot for sure. Even James White has these tendencies to basically say our cultural and social heritage, the literary heritage, the Greek thought, the Roman thought, all of these things that contributed to Western civilization are actually not important. All that matters is the Bible. So like I saw this whole thing coming, and Stephen Wolfe was never on that side. He was always the defender of the West in a
yeah,
way in the way that they weren't. And so I've
yeah,
been saying that this needed to happen, for a
yeah,
while now.
yeah. And it's unfortunate because, right, I have tremendous respect uh, for Rushdoony um, and Bonson and all the work that they did. But at
Rushton
the
is
end,
probably not as bad because Rushton
yeah,
actually like he was
no,
drenched in like the Anglo-Saxon tradition of
yeah,
our
yeah,
institutions. Um, but like the second generation, I think was a lot worse. The
yeah,
internet generation got
yeah,
really bad. Like
yeah.
the like Joel McDermott and all those guys.
By what standard?
Yeah.
By what standard? And you see this like Steve or William Wolf was on a debate this week, uh, um, regarding the what is it like Exodus 18, where a lot of theonomic guys are like the standard for voting is what Jethro tells Moses in Exodus 18, and you can't vote for anybody that accepts a bribe or is unrighteous, and you need guys that are of high moral standing in order to vote for them. And it's like, man, one, I don't think that's I mean, one, it's one man, it's Moses selecting leaders. And so if that power is vested in one person, then yeah, that's a great standard. When you're talking about mass democracy,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? like I'm just trying not to die, man. I'm just trying not to have my civilization destroyed. Right? That's all I'm concerned about at this point.
Sounds like an idol.
Yeah, apparently. It's it's so loony and so preposterous. But guys get you see this with libertarians as well, where they get so narrowly focused and they think they have the perfect program to um to construct their society, and they think it's just bulletproof and foolproof, and it will just, if we just follow the steps in the plan, it'll work. And it's like that's not how reality works
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
Every age has different tools and different requirements. We have a set of different weapons on the basis of our ever-changing enemies.
yeah,
So that it's very
the
particular.
world is particular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
contextual. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's like it's not like morality changes. Where that's not what anyone's arguing. It's that it's just like preaching the Bible. It's like when you preach, you do application. And so if you have a particular congregation, right, the passage that you preach, you might have different application for different people in the same congregation, or if you were in a different place in the world, it's gonna hit them differently,
Yeah.
right? Because particularity matters.
Yeah.
And we want to universalize everything. We
I
think give
think
this guy this
I think
standard.
that's the ultimate like Achilles heel of like all the theonomists and stuff, that everything has to be this absolute, applicable for all times and all situations mentality. That basically the essence of that is a denial of the category of the political.
Yeah.
The political is the class of friends and enemies. And so you have to use the weapons that you're given to address the enemies that you're given, basically.
Yeah, and it's like all this stuff. Everything we've said is like so obvious.
Yeah.
It's so transparently obvious. It's right before your eyes, and you have to delude yourself into thinking anything other than this.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're under mass delusion.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Well,
our guys are going to show up today, CJ.
no. I think we're gonna do a round two. This was just to set it all up for next week, but I'll
Hopefully,
verify with them.
yeah. Hopefully
Yeah,
they're okay.
we'll call it so.
With the hurricane.
And yeah, I hope they're okay. That's we do care about our guests here.
Yeah, we do.
We do. So, Andrew, what's your life update?
We're working on selling our house so we can move down to
Nice.
Tennessee to hang out with you, do this in person.
Yes.
So
that's my update too.
soon. Yeah, you're there and having a great time, and life is good.
It's very
And
wet here.
oh, is the hurricane there too?
It's the storm. There's no.
Tennessee gets hurricanes. I was not informed of this.
Are you out?
No, we would get them in Missouri. I mean, they would come up.
There's no hurricanes here, but there is rain.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can settle for rain.
Last question:
yeah.
Is this a fake HARP hurricane? Say yes.
I mean, I have no reason to believe it's not.
All right. I agree. On that.
All right. Well, yeah. Anything you got to promote?
No.
Yeah.
No
No
promotion.
Chronicle stuff right now. Okay. All
I'm so
right.
behind.
Yeah. Me too. On everything, but we'll continue to press on. Like once we get to the promised land of Tennessee, I can't
There's,
wait.
well, so like once you're down here, we got some plans. We've been talking to people, but like there's a lot
Plans.
of like political engagement opportunities here.
Yeah.
Tennessee is going to be a battleground. I mean, it's
Mhm.
the next decade. The Democrats and the left are really going to target Tennessee,
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
Nashville's extremely bad,
Yeah.
um, and they have plans for Chattanooga and Knoxville and places
Mhm.
like that. So there's a fight before us, and I guess this is true of every state, you know. So
Yeah. It is everywhere. I mean,
yeah.
that's when I've talked to people, because people have been, some people, not most people, are very supportive of what we're doing.
Mhm.
But there's some people that are like naysayers, right? They're like, "Oh, you're just fleeing, you're cutting and running and running away scared like a coward. You should stay in Minnesota and let Tim Walz take your children and mutilate them." And I mean, just really dumb criticism. And it's like, you got to stay and fight. And it's like, well, I can continue to do the same thing that everyone has done here for a long time and lose and continue to lose, or you can go to a place to fight there and have prospects for winning.
Mhm.
Right? Which should you do? Right? Right. Which did you go to a place where you could fight and win? I mean, just thinking
Yeah.
in terms of like military strategy, do you fight the enemy on the battlefield of his choosing, where he is definitely going to destroy you, or do you go fight him where you can maybe beat him?
Mhm.
Right? Whoa, that's a tough decision. What should I do? Right? Obviously, right. That's what you want to do, and that those are the things that we're looking forward to doing. Right? Being
Mhm.
able to build things, be able to build actual institutions that
Yeah.
that will last beyond our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. Yeah. Like, why would I want to do that? Of course I would. Right? And so I'm very excited for what we've got coming,
Yeah.
and it's going to be great. The last thing I have to promote, I do have something to promote, is
Can't wear a tie like that without promoting something.
I'm speaking at a conference in Indiana, Northern Indiana, next month on October 19th with William Wolf. He will be there, and Rod Martin, and it is it's going to be a lot of fun to be there. I think, is John Harris going to be there too? I think he is. And so it's me and a bunch of Baptists, right? And but it's going to be great, and it's the Jesus and Politics Conference. You can go look that up. I can maybe put a link in the show notes. But a lot of heavy hitters there that they let me be part of, and it'll be great. It'll be very, very based, right? And so this kids still use that, or keyed. That's the new one. Keyed. It's gonna be keyed. Yeah, John.
Uh,
Yeah, John is gonna be there. I was having a senior moment right now. As you know, I shave so you can't see the gray hairs in my beard. All right. But yeah, John's gonna be there. Rod Martin. I mean, he was one of the original PayPal guys. Really bright dude. Really, really interesting guy. And um, I'm excited to just hang out with those guys and meet everybody that is coming there. Um, yeah, it'll be awesome to put on. My friend Tim Bouchong, he he is I've known him for years. My favorite boomer, and I've told, I don't use it as a slur with him. He takes it. He's like, he likes it, but it'll be
we all
good.
have a
Right
favorite.
before.
You know
Yeah,
who my
right.
favorite?
Who's your favorite boomer?
You know, he's like the most boomer person on the right.
Steve Saylor.
Paul Gottfried.
Oh, He's not. He's a silent generation. He's too old to be a boomer.
Oh, he's a boomer.
Are
Isn't
you
boomer
sure?
like post 40s?
He was born before World War II.
Oh, maybe he's not a boomer.
He's not a boomer. You got to pick
You
somebody
sure?
else. You got.
All right.
You got to pick someone else.
I'll
Quick.
think
Do it
about it.
before. No, you got to do it right now.
No.
Right now.
No, I can't commit. Paul's a boomer.
No, he is not.
What
I'm
year
gonna die on this hill, CJ.
are boomers?
It's like 1946 and onward.
Yeah, he was born in he was born in 45. Okay, wow.
Not a
One
boomer.
year. One
Sorry.
year. Dang
Sorry.
it.
He's not. Yeah, Buchanan also silent generation, right? And they're silent. The reason they're called the silent generation is everybody they're so silent. Everyone lumps them in with the boomers. So you got to pick somebody else. I'm sorry.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. The people want to know.
Who's super boomery?
I mentioned Steve.
Yeah, Steve's a good one, but he's not like he hasn't had any.
He's not your favorite. Our guest who's come on our show is not your favorite. I'll let him know that.
No, I can't commit.
You can't.
No, because I have one shot at this. You know, like you can't change your favorite boomer later. That's one of the rules.
Okay. All right. Well,
all right. Well, I gotta go
next week. Yeah, you got a week. I'm giving you 1
okay.
week to do this, but I got to get rolling too. Thank you so much for watching and letting us, meander toward the end here. So if you made it this far, please like and subscribe and share this conversation. We appreciate you all, especially everyone in the chat. It's been fun. And all of you out there, remember, stay peacefully dangerous. We're going to win. We'll see you later. Bye.